Hey everybody, Jane here. I am coming to you with my January 2024 mid-month wrap-up. So I have had a great month so far. I'm already 10 books in, and my stats are about on par with where I'd like them to be. So I am just tickled pink. So we are going to go over all the books I read in the first part of January and cross our fingers that January continues to be an awesome reading month.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soft spoken.
Okay, so we are going to go through these in order from least favorite to most favorite. I did not have any DNFs so far this month, which is awesome. I did not have any 1 stars and I did not have any 2 stars. So we are going to start with our 3-star reads. The first is a middle grade I kind of accidentally stumbled upon while I was looking for something else and wasn't really expecting, I don't think, it to be what it was. It's kind of a younger middle grade graphic novel, and while it was cute, it didn't really do it for me, hence being at the bottom of my list. And that was Cassandra, Animal Psychic. This is about a girl named Cassandra who is going through some personal changes at home. Her mom is in a very serious relationship with a man who has a daughter as well, and Cassandra's feeling a little bit like she's not getting as much attention as she would like, and she's having some clashes with the other girl. Also, she is an animal psychic, so she is trying to help, in this particular book, a family find their lost cat. This was just okay. I know it's middle grade and I'm not the audience. I think my issue was that even though I can usually appreciate a middle grade book and even a middle grade graphic novel, I felt like this one just was a little bit, it wasn't very smooth, and I wasn't always clear on what we were doing and why. So for me, this one was just, it didn't flow very well, and it was a miss. My next book on this list is another one that didn't hit very well, and I will tell you, if at the end of the year I do a most disappointing list, this will probably be the first one on it because I had really high hopes for this book and it let me down. And that was Artek by Phillips. So I recently found that I am fascinated, into alien and monster romances. And I'd gotten this book because I love musicals, and I know the Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is a musical. I've only seen part of it. I'd gotten a copy from the library, and the copy, like, it had scratches or whatever, so I only got past a certain point, but I still thought this sounds delightful, and I was doing other alien romances. This is about our alien Artek who decides he would like a wife, and he is into the spinster shop owner who has been living with her dad, who's been pressuring her to marry, as he has a girlfriend and he wants to marry his girlfriend, but his girlfriend won't marry him unless his spinster daughter gets out. So the daughter has good reasons to be like, okay, yeah, this alien guy, he's nice enough. We've never had any negative encounters, so I'm going to marry this dude and it's going to be fine. So you have kind of a marriage of convenience plot, which is normally my thing. I absolutely love it. And these characters set off to return to Artek's home, where he lives with 6 other aliens who were his battle brothers. So these guys were soldiers, they fought in a war together, and so while they are not genetically related, they are family. I ended up giving this book a 3-star just because I didn't really like the writing style. I thought it was a little bit underwritten, and I wanted so much more. I loved the ideas of the characters, but we didn't get a whole lot of character development, and I was sad about that because the side characters especially were really interesting, and I would have loved to have read this whole series and been able to enjoy it, but based on how it was written, it just wasn't for me. But I thought the plot was fine. There's not a lot to it, but it was fine. The characters were interesting but underdeveloped, and just the writing style was kind of meh for me. There is some spice in this book, so just be aware of that if you go in. I didn't think it was super detailed or anything overly exciting. This book is probably fine if it is your first foray into alien romances. If you've read Ice Planet Barbarians, this doesn't hold a candle to it, and so you'll probably be disappointed. So that's I guess what I would have to say about this. All right, the next book on my list was not a bad book. It was just a book that was kind of a meh for me. And that book is The Clinic. Now, this is an advanced reader copy, and it is coming out this month, January 2024. I believe it's coming out on the 23rd. Let's say the 23rd. I'm not going to swear to it. But anyway, this is The Clinic, and it is a mystery, maybe a thriller. I think it's a mystery thriller, somewhere in there. And we have Meg. And Meg works in a casino, and she is security for this casino to make sure that people are being honest with their gambling. I don't know if she had a law enforcement background, but she reads like a law enforcement character. Anyway, she learns that her sister, who is a musician, like a pop star, has died in rehab after a relapse, and she goes to find out what happens because there's some shady circumstances. I like the characters okay. I thought this was interesting. I really love the way this author looks at addiction and really focusing on addiction as something that is not a character flaw, but instead a response to trauma. So I thought that was a very good thing. I wasn't able to connect with Cate or particularly the other point of view character who is a worker at the clinic. I don't remember her name. But I notice with thrillers, I often have a hard time with that anyway because they're not good characters. They may be well-written characters, and I didn't have any complaints about how these characters were written. I just couldn't always relate to the choices that they were making. The plot was okay. It does something that I don't enjoy when plots do, and I think that definitely for me brought it down a little bit because I wanted a couple plot things that just I wanted more for the plot, and the plot things that it did do were not things that I like, and they're just tropes that are just not my tropes. So I think this book could really work for some people. And it was okay. I had a fine time reading it. I'm not sad I read it. I would even read from this author again. This particular book just didn't wow me. It was just fine. The next book on our list is a manga. It is Cat and Gamer, Volume 2. This is about a gamer who lacks some social skills and who adopts a cat. It is very similar to the first book of just, I have a cat. Here's cool, cute, interesting stuff with my cat. And while I really enjoyed the first book, I didn't necessarily think this was, it didn't feel like we were going anywhere else interesting. It was just more of the same, which is fine, but not really what I was looking for. So I probably am not going to continue reading any more Cat and Gamer unless I just want to pick up something that is cute, fluffy, and here's a cute cat with cute cat antics, because that's really what this is. So if you're looking for a cozy, kitty with kitty antics, this is probably it for you. I mean, you might love it. It just kind of was lacking in plot and anything going on other than cute kitty. And so I did give it a 4-star because, again, I like cute kitty. It was just okay. Just okay for me. The next is also a manga, and that is My Gently Raised Beast. So we have a girl who is the daughter of an aristocrat. I want to say he is a king. And she's I don't even know if she's illegitimate. She's the first, I want to say she's illegitimate. She was not raised as the princess, but it is found out later after her mother has died that she is the princess and the daughter of this king, and he brings her to the castle, and her siblings are mean to her, and people are basically being like, oh, she's lowborn, she's not really worth anything. And she meets this cat who is a cat. He's not really a cat, he's a leopard shifter type thing, but he's still young. They're both kids. I want to say like one's 9 and one's 12. And anyway, they form this friendship. The cat is a little bit possessive of her, but it was an interesting story. I did order the next volume to see if I like it. Them being young and was kind of weird, and they acted a little older. They acted probably closer to like 13, 14 in something, so I thought that was a little bit strange. But I liked the ideas that were happening, and I'm interested to see what happens here. This could really be great, and it was very interesting and intriguing, and I liked what we were doing, other than the characters not seeming quite to act their age, and a couple things that I was just like, I don't fully understand this. This is a graphic novel, but I think it started out as a manga or is adjacent to manga, and I know I don't always understand manga very well. So it could be a situation where, even though this is read like a graphic novel, not backwards, that it's enough manga adjacent that maybe that's where I'm having some of my questioning. I'm still kind of learning how to read manga. All right, the next book is going to be the Half-Orcs Maiden Bride by Ruby Dixon. So I just found Ruby Dixon and like, where have you been all my life, Ruby? Writing books that I was not picking up, clearly. But this is one, I've been reading her Ice Planet Barbarian series and really enjoying it. But this was one that I kind of just stumbled across. Somebody else had recommended it. I want to say it was Beautifully Bookish Bethany, but don't quote me. And it was on their like best romances of the year. And I already knew I like Ruby Dixon, and an orc sounds awesome. So I picked it up. So the premise of this book is that there's a girl who is in her 30s. She's very tall. She's not attractive by the standards of her society, and she has not been able to be married off. Her dad is awful. Just awful. And so in all of his awfulness, he decides to sell her to an orc as a bride. Now this orc, he's a half-orc. He needs a bride because he's recently bought a plot of land, but he's not really being seen as human or of his class or anything like that. And so he wants to kind of legitimize his claim on the land and his wealth and everything else by having a human wife. And so she arrives, and there's all these cultural things that have to happen for their wedding, and that was interesting. And then her dad is a awful person and causes problems. And this book, it was a good time. A lot of spice. Lots of spice, which I mean, we expect from Ruby Dixon, right? That's not a surprise. Not as much plot as I would have liked, but I did have a good time. These characters were fun. I really enjoyed them. I wish we could have maybe had a little bit more plot, and a couple scenes might be uncomfortable for some people. So I will say, like, I thought they were handled really, really well. But if you have triggers, you might want to read the trigger warnings, because There's a couple scenes that I could see being very triggering, and even one, like in the content warnings, I was, I don't know how I feel about this, but the way it was done didn't bother me. To each their own. So I recommend it. It was good. It was a fun time. It just is definitely more a fluffy, fun read and kind of low on plot. If you want plot, this isn't the book for you. There was a little plot, but not a whole lot. It was mostly fun, smexy times and fun character building. Because the girl, she's afraid the guy doesn't like her because she's not traditionally pretty, and he's like, I'm an orc, so of course she doesn't like me, but you know, we're gonna make it work. Oh, I did have one other criticism of that book, and one thing that really just kept hitting me really wrong, and that was that he kept, or she kept calling him ugly in her POV. And like, I get it, he's an orc. But like, as the reader, I want you to be falling for him, and I don't want you to tell me that he's ugly and that, you know, or that you should think he's ugly. Like, no, I want to, I want, I want your feelings to conquer the fact that he's an orc. We get that he's an orc, but you know, he's your orc. So, that was my little side note into that. The next book on this list is also a speculative romance. This one's an alien romance, and this was Choosing Theo. In Choosing Theo, we have the girl, I think her name was Jade, who is abducted by aliens. I told you I was in my alien mood right now. She's abducted by aliens, and she ends up on this alien planet. And they're like, we can't send you home, but if you spend a year on our planet, we will let you go to other approved adjacent planets and choose where you live. But during this time, we would like you to take a husband, which is for them, marriages are 3 months. And so you would marry somebody for 3 months, and they don't have very many women in their population. They have a lot more men born. And so women go and stay for 3 months with these guys and decide if they want to re-up their marriage for another 3 months. Or I wasn't entirely clear on that contract exactly. Anyway, so she is brought to this area to choose a husband for the next 3 months. The husbands go to husband school, so she's like gets to look at their grade cards for husband school and things like that. The man that she chooses is named Theo, and Theo has scars. He is not attractive per their society's standards. So automatically, the first thing he assumes, because he's some kind of mercenary, is that she is a spy who is trying to murder him. And so, like, he doesn't trust her, and he also is very aggressive and alpha male, which I didn't love a lot of the time. But anyway, that's who she picks, and she goes home, and they have to deal with things and, of course, fall in love, because that's how these kind of books work. I had such mixed feelings about this book. The beginning of it was so good. Up to the first at least 25%. Like, I remember at 25% messaging a couple of my friends and being like, if this book doesn't do something stupid, this could be a 5-star. I'm feeling a 5-star from this book. I should not have said anything, because things took some turns. There are wonderful, amazing moments in this book. Absolutely cute and heartwarming things. My very favorite scene in this book, another one that I messaged to all of my friends, is Theo's like, I'm going to make her give herself away and prove that she is an assassin or somebody sent after me. I'm going to make it absolutely impossible and miserable for her to live here. She will be so upset with the thing I do that she will just throw up her hands and be like, I'm out. I can't possibly take this. What does he do? He gets her a puppy, because in their world, women don't like puppies, which they do, and that's kind of a dumb world building thing that they have. But anyway, so yes. So she's like, puppy, because she's an earth woman, and she's like, puppy, and he's like, It's licking you. It's shedding all over you. Are you not upset? Do you not want to leave? Do you not want to admit that you're really an assassin who's been paid well and you just can't possibly live here because there's a puppy? So there's things like that that I loved and were really cute. This book has some consent issues. This book has some massive aggression issues with the hero. Now, those things were not together. So, like, with consent, it wasn't, like, there were things that he would lie to her and be like, hey, this is a tradition we have, because you obviously are saying you don't know. And then it would be, like, bathing together naked. And he'd be like, well, we got to do this because it's what we do. Even though it wasn't really what they did, it wasn't part of their traditions, and he knows she's not into it. Okay? So there was things like that. When I say consent issues, like, that's the kind of thing I mean. I don't mean, there is one time later in the book where she tells him no, and she has to tell him more than once, which, I mean, but anyway, the real aggressive stuff she's fine with. At one point, she gives him kind of a broad consent for things. She's like, unless I tell you no, I'm fine with it, so just go with whatever. And that was a good thing, because he was pretty aggressive in some of this stuff. And for me, I don't like really aggressive stuff, especially in the romance and especially in the, spicy parts. And it was just too much for me. The world building in this book also didn't make a lot of sense. I only read book 1, so maybe a lot more is explained in the other books, but what was laid out in front of me, like, by the end of the book, I was like, wait a second. Then a lot of things didn't really work, make sense. Like, if you try to plot, there's some plot issues. And again, maybe those are resolved in future books, but just kind of the setup and the world didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I had some issues with it. The next and last 4-star, and this was a high 4-star. I really enjoyed it. It just wasn't quite enough to make a 5. And that was Witches Get Stitches. This is the 3rd book in the Stay a Spell series. Book 1 I gave 5 stars to, and book 2 and 3 were both 4 stars. I did like this more than book 2, but less than book 1. And this is book 3. So these books follow these witch sisters, the Savoy sisters, who are very powerful witches in New Orleans. And in this particular book, we have Violet. And we have her actually have like a flashback in the beginning to a time before even book 1 happened, where she had met Nico, who is a werewolf, and there was some attraction there, but for reasons she decided she didn't want to hang around. Well, later on, Nico shows up back in her life because he is the cousin of the guy that book 1's was the hero in book 1 romance. So Nico is hanging out, wants to be near his cousin, and is setting up his life in New Orleans for reasons. And he is in love with Violet and wants to pursue her, and she just wants to be friends, or so she says. There's also a subplot about magic tattoos, because, that's the other thing, Violet and Nico are opening up a tattoo parlor together, and there's some magic tattoos involved that are important to the plot. This book, I really liked Nico and Violet overall. Nico was a lot more alpha male than Mateo, who was the other werewolf we saw, and that was in book 1, and that's his cousin. And at times it was a little much. This was another situation where there was some aggression. Now, we are told very clearly that Violet has telekinetic powers as a witch. So, like, if anything was not up to her snuff and was bothering her, she'd just push him off. Like, this is a situation where things look very aggressive, but, like, clearly everybody is having a good time, because if they weren't, he wouldn't be doing it. But there were just anything that super aggressive, and I even had that issue slightly with book 1, but book 1 was nowhere near like the level of aggressive that this was. And I get that he's a werewolf, I get it, and again, it wasn't like beyond what I could stand, but there were times that I was like, oh, do we have to? A little bit of an ick for me. So, I didn't necessarily think that was well done. I did like the characters. The spice wasn't great. And there's not a ton, I don't want to say there's not a ton of plot. I thought the plot wasn't as good as it could have been. I don't want to spoil anything, but the plot let me down a little bit. And like I said, overall, I had a good time. I just would have liked maybe a little bit stronger of a plot, a little bit less aggressive on the spice. But this couple is a lot of fun, and overall, I had a good time. All right, so everything else on my list are 5 stars. So the next one is one that I consumed as an audiobook, and it is called Conventionally Yours. This is about 2 guys who are playing a collectible card game, and they are going to go to a collectible card game tournament. They play with a local group. There's a professor who's a professor at their college, and he leads this group. Gamer Grandpa, I think is what it's called. And he does like YouTube videos with them playing and stuff like that. Anyway, so Gamer Grandpa has these tickets, and they've been invited to go compete at a huge tournament in California. And they're on the East Coast, and they got to go out to California. Or maybe it's Las Vegas. Anyway, it's there's going to be cross country here. So they have to go out and do this tournament, and if they win the tournament, they could win a spot on the league. And our main characters are Alton and Conrad. And Alton and Conrad both really desperately want to win this tournament for different reasons. Also, these guys, at least at the beginning of the book, are not fans of each other. This is the first hate-to-love romance I have ever really liked. But man, this worked for me. So, I know why it worked, though. So Alton, he is neurodiverse. We don't really get his full diagnosis, and actually we learn that he doesn't have an exact diagnosis of what is wrong with him. But because of it, he has really bad trouble in social situations. He also has a little bit of jealousy with Conrad. Conrad has a lot of stuff going on, and he and Alden just don't get along at all in the beginning of the story. As they go off on this adventure to get to the tournament, initially it is them and the Gamer Grandpa character and then another player, and then they're meeting a friend at the other, one of their friends flew. One of their friends flew to the other tournament. Their name is Peyton, I think. Flew to the tournament because they were just not feeling the car ride. Everybody else is taking a cross-country trip to this tournament. And slowly, one by one, we have reasons that people have to quit until it's just Conrad and Alton. And I don't know if it's Alden or Alton because I read this, and I think it's I want to say it's Alden. And so as we're traveling, Alden and Conrad start to kind of figure out that both of them have misjudged each other a good bit, and that their things with them are much more complicated and nuanced, and that they just needed to give each other a little bit of grace. And it was lovely. I play Magic the Gathering, not as much now, but I used to play it really actively. So like a collectible card game, I understand kind of what that is, and I really enjoyed it, and it was all nerdy and wonderful, and all the characters were nerdy and wonderful. Obviously, this is a male-male romance, lots of diversity, lots of LGBTQIA characters, lots of discussion about issues regarding being LGBTQIA. So like Conrad's family is no longer in contact with him because of him being into boys, and that's kind of caused a lot of issues throughout the story that he's trying to deal with. And then Alden, he's neurodiverse, so we've got him being like, I don't know what to do in any of these situations, like I want to, and being really better at communicating throughout and just being like to Conrad, like, here's where I'm at. Like, I don't know what to do. And that really was helpful with preventing miscommunication tropes. Alden also is a big softy in many ways. He just doesn't always show it properly because of his social cues and issues. So I really ended up liking both of these guys so much by the end. And this is like the first hate to love that I've ever really liked. This book does have some spice. I will tell you it's very vague. So it's not closed door, but everything is very vague. It's not super detailed. So I think if you're concerned about that, I probably wouldn't be, because it's nothing in great detail. Like, you have to know things to make any sense of what's happening. I read the vast majority of this book with my teenage children. Like, we were on a car trip and we were listening to this, and they loved it. They equally loved it. They didn't read the very ending of it because our trip was over, and I told them, well, you're taking too long to listen to this, so I'm going to listen to the rest of it by myself. So the most scene they didn't get to read, but everything else they did, and it was very vague. Like, at one point, my daughter, and again, these are teenagers, she looked at me, she's like, is this the thing that's happening? I'm like, yeah, that's what's happening. She's like, oh, okay. Anyway, so it's pretty vague, but it was so good. So good. I recommend it. Especially, I think, if you are looking for an introduction into male-male romance and you're a little bit nerdy. The next book on my list is also a nerdy book. I love it. And it is Dungeons and Drama. This is also, well, I guess the other one was more like late teen, and I guess this is late teen also. They're both, the last book was college students. These are high school students, like senior year. But anyway, what is her name? Riley. I should know that. I have a family member named Riley. Anyway, Riley is big into musicals and drama, and she is grounded. She and her friend made a bad choice to see a musical. They stole a car to go see a musical, and now she's in trouble with her parents, rightly so. And her parents are divorced, and her dad says, okay, you can't, or her parents decide you can't be trusted alone until you earn our trust back. So we are taking you, and you're going to work with your dad at your dad's gaming store for, I think it's 8 weeks that they said. So she goes. She is not feeling it. She's never had a close relationship with her dad. She's not a gamer. She doesn't love it. Then she meets Nathan. And initially, she and Nathan do not get along, but then her ex-boyfriend shows up, and she basically is like, he basically is kind of taunting her in a way. He's like, well, someday you'll get over me. Someday you'll get a new boyfriend. She's like, I'm already dating somebody new. He's like, well, who is it? She's like, Nathan. And so then they do this fake dating thing, because not only has she done this and now she has to like date him a little bit so her ex-boyfriend doesn't get suspicious, but also Nathan is in love with a girl who they play Dungeons and Dragons with. And so she's like trying to help Nathan make this girl jealous so that she admits that she likes him. And then she is trying to put on the facade that she's dating because of the situation. And it's just lovely. I loved all the gaming. I loved the Dungeons and Dragons. I loved all the nerdy stuff. This was wonderful. And I just gushed over it. So I had a great time with this. There were times where Riley's kind of ridiculous, but she's a teenage girl, so duh. But I really had a good time. All right, the last book on my list. And this is a book that I suspect will be on my favorites of the year list because I liked it so much. I liked it so much. Like, I don't give above a 5, but if I had 6s, or like, this is like a god tier level 5. Like, this is as high of a level 5 as I give. And that was Barbarian Lover by Ruby Dixon. This is the 3rd book in the Ice Planet Barbarians, and oh my gosh, I just love this series. Like, I don't know how I didn't know this was a thing, but now that it's a thing, I just want to gobble up all of the books. I initially listened to this on audio, and it was a crazy situation because I listened to book 1, it was okay. Listen to book 2. It was really good. Listen to this. I am hooked. I'm going to read the entire series now. So this book, though, I didn't own the paperbacks. I just had listened to them on my Libby app. Turns out all of the paperbacks have bonus content. So I went and I bought all of the paperbacks. Well, no, I haven't bought all of them. I've bought 1 through 5. And so I'm going to be reading them with the material I missed because I didn't get to read all of it. I did already go and read the bonus in this, though, and it's lovely. But anyway, this is Kira and Ihako. And basically, if you're not familiar with Ice Planet Barbarians, some girls were kidnapped. They were dumped on this ice planet. There are barbarians that live there, like primitive people that live there, and they are helping these girls survive. And there is a fated mates aspect to it. So Kira, they've gone back to the barbarians' encampment. Kira is very concerned because she is pretty sure she's never going to be anybody's fated mate. The fated mates in their world does have to do with, like, making babies. And Kira is an infertile woman. And I know the first time I read the Ice Planet Barbarians book, I was like, oh no. I, as an infertile or very low fertility anyway woman, would not have but I wouldn't have gotten my mate. I wouldn't have gotten my barbarian. And so I was so glad that they dealt with that. Anyway, she so she's very worried about being thrown out. She's also not really interested in any of the guys because she doesn't feel like any of them's going to be her fated mate because duh, she can't have babies. She had an infection when she was younger that she was told would result in her not having children. Anyway, she also has this device in her ear where she can hear the bad aliens who dropped them off on this planet, and she also can hear and interpret different languages. So she is worried that the bad aliens are going to come back to the encampment. And so she goes to the leadership and is like, hey, we need to go and try to get this removed. They have a place that's like an old crash site where the barbarian peoples like came over. And she's like, we should go see if we have any tools there that I can get this removed because I'm really worried it has a tracking device. Fair enough. So this guy who has been relentlessly pursuing her, and she's been really nice about like, dude, you don't want me, just go away. His name's Ahako. He's like, I'll take you to the alien ship. We'll get you taken care of. And they bring 2 other people with them. I don't remember who it is. But anyway, so they're on this adventure trying to get this thing removed from her ear. And, you know, he keeps pursuing her and she keeps being like, listen, I'm never going to be your fated mate, so just back off. And they have a discussion about it. And I love that he is the best communicator in the world. Like, he's the opposite of a miscommunication trope. He's very blunt, he's very forward, and I love that. So anyway, he basically is all like, they talk about the situation, and he's like, you know what? There's not very many women in my world anyway. I only have a 50-50 chance of getting a mate anyway. I like you. Why don't you just be my like mate? And then if I get, you know, fated mates to somebody else, well, I just won't go. We'll deal with that. I just won't go. I like you, and I'm just going to promise myself to you, and it's going to be fine. So, crazy alien stuff happens, and I don't want to tell you anything else because it's spoilery, but it was good. I loved it. I will tell you, after reading reviews, some of the things I loved in this book were things that other people had real issues with. So I will give you a slight spoiler because it's part of the reason I love this book and I felt all the feels, and it may not be for everybody. And that slight spoiler is she is at the end able to have children. And there is like a moment where she finds that out, and just as an infertile woman, it was just beautiful and lovely. And I related to her so much through my own infertility, through my own wishes. Like, This was beautiful fantasy wish fulfillment for me as an infertile woman. I've heard a lot of people criticizing it and saying they shouldn't have had the cure, made her fertile again, blah blah. I love that. Thank you, Ruby, for doing that. I, as most infertile women who want children and don't want to be infertile, like, that is the beauty of the fantasy, that magic thing that makes it so we can have all the babies. You know, we're, especially if we've gone through fertility treatments and failed, which I have. I've gone through fertility treatments 2 different times. The first time I did have children, and the second time we tried for a year and it failed, and are not currently pursuing any more treatments. But it just, for me, having that healing, beautiful ending, it just, as an infertile woman, touched me so deeply, and just was like, that's what I want to happen to me too. I just want to have all the babies. So anyway, this book, I freaking loved it. I can't wait to read the rest of the series. I can't wait to reread this and all the books that came before it, so I can get the extra little novella things at the end that I didn't get last time. And just, it's beautiful. And I just, how could this exist and me not know, and me not know that I wanted it so badly? All right, guys, that has been everything I've read up through the middle of January. As long as this video is, I'm very, very glad that I decided to film a mid-month wrap-up, because I don't think I wanted to edit something as long as a full month wrap-up is going to end up being. So, tell me about what you're reading. Tell me if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, and if you agreed with me or felt differently. All opinions are valid. And also, if you've read Ice Planet Barbarians, which one's your favorite? Which one's your favorite? Because I just want to gush about Ice Planet Barbarians all day, every day, forever. All right, guys, this has been Jane. I'll talk to you next time. Bye!